morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 78 of the Blowback Roundtable. We have a full panel today. I'm Billy Bob on the West Coast. I've got Ben Toth in Peach, Hungary. Leo Zhao coming from a suburb in Berlin. Are you on the outskirts, in the middle of Berlin, north side of Berlin, east side of Berlin?
I'm in the north side, former eastern northeast Berlin.
Okay.
I guess it's a suburb. It's been gentrified, super gentrified.
Okay, so you live in the bougie sector.
A little bit, not by choice, but because my girlfriend has an old contract, has a contract from 10 years.
Oh, nice.
15, more than 15 years ago. Yeah, so it's the rent is affordable. Other than that, you find like people like, I guess where the tail end, there are still some former older Easterners living among the westernized yuppies drinking lattes. There's still some these places in the shopping
in the area known as Eastern Berlin. There's still some people that have maintained their residence. No, that's great. Yeah. That's great.
But we can call your dwellings rent controlled, whereas Ian Kammer is, I think, back in Moscow,
yes.
Based on the nice butterflies that you have at home.
Yes, I'm back from Crimea. For those of you who missed me, I was in Crimea for 2 weeks, about 2 weeks. So I missed a couple shows there, but I am now back in Moscow.
And Billy Bob, we weren't sure that he'd make it.
It's Carlo.
Aha!
Hey.
Carlo, thank you for joining us. I'm glad to see you. I was thinking that you might not be able to make it this week, but no, it's good. So the first thing I wanted to, and Carlo, of course, is in Washington, D.C., belly of the beast, and it's noon Eastern time over there. So, we're spanning the globe as usual. The title of our broadcast is Russia, China Up, United States Down, and I'm happy to report that is actually referencing a recent global survey, and this is the results of this global survey where appreciation and support, I guess, of the West is in decline, as it should be, and appreciation and support of Russia and China is on the increase. So this is just another sign of the declining empire, which is great to see. But what is our first topic? I know backstage we were discussing Ian Kammer's recent conversion to Marxism-Leninism, as he is displaying with his hat. We were talking about the Victory Day parade that he witnessed firsthand in Kerch. But do we want to continue that?
Sure, yeah.
Why not? We also have a couple of pictures from your trip in Cape. Whenever you want to, I can bring them on screen.
But yeah, go ahead, bring them on screen. That'd be good.
So on the Reading Junkie, this is the latest post from Ian, trip to Crimea photos, and I'm just so we don't have a sidebar. I hope I can do that, and then
there you go. It's good.
Picture by picture.
Yeah. So we started. Maria and I, we started in Sevastopol.
I can read that much.
Yes. So we took the St. Petersburg to Sevastopol train. Of course, we were in Moscow, but we just got on board. The train started in St. Petersburg, and we boarded in Moscow, went down. That was from Moscow to Sevastopol is 36 hours, about 36 hours on the train. And we spent a few days in Sevastopol, saw a lot of the sights there.
Did you go over the Kerch Bridge?
Yes, we did go over the Crimean Bridge. And actually, that is, by the way, I want to mention that it is the official name. I don't know why. And I know it's not your fault. Like some reason, every Western outlet calls it the Kerch Bridge. I have no idea if they're just being petty or what, but it's the Crimean Bridge is the official name of the bridge. It's the Crimean Bridge. But yes, we did go over it there and back, and I got some, and we did see it from the outside, because when you're in Kerch, which is that town by the bridge, There's no. These are still photos of me in Sevastopol.
Want me to advance?
Yeah, keep going. You just kind of scroll through these, and you don't need to linger too long. Oh, it's except this one. So soldier and sailor is a very famous monument that I was hoping to get. Unfortunately, I could not get too close to it because that whole area of the beach is being renovated. So I could not, unfortunately, get too close to the statue. But I zoomed in as much as I can.
Construction. It looks like, because that's a guy down there, right? That's the reference.
Yes.
For the thing.
Yes.
That's a big statue.
Guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, you can keep scrolling. But yeah, when you go through, actually, all of the Crimean cities we went through.
Oh, hello, Leica.
Little dog. Lots and lots of dogs and cats. You can see they're tagged and neutered, but they just have the dogs and cats. Lots of
What
dogs
ruins are those? It's World War II ruins?
So
go back.
Yeah, so these
one?
ruins. This is Khersones, not to be confused with the Kherson city. It's a different place, but Khersones is a very old Greek colony, like before Christ old, like more than 2,000 years old. And it was part of the Eastern Roman Empire. So when Prince Vladimir came down, and this is actually where he was baptized. He did not go all the way to Constantinople, but he went down to Crimea to this Byzantine church in this settlement. So this is actually where Prince Vladimir, which I did not actually know until I came here. I knew he was baptized and then baptized Russia, but I did not know this is the actual exact location where he was baptized, which is very cool. And so it's a tourist site. You can see this, and it's a very big settlement. I didn't post too many photos of it here, unfortunately, but you can keep scrolling. But it's a very big place.
The export version of this one we called Zhiguli back in Hungary. I'm not sure what it was called in Russia, but this ladder with the 4 eyes, that was the Zhiguli that we used to love.
Yes, and here's just a nice sunset in Sevastopol, and this is, I'm going to be honest, I forget which theater it is, just theater in Sevastopol. Very nice
Your
building.
average Russian theater.
Yes.
Your average Russian fountain.
Yes, and so lots of little cool lights and this is Yalta. So we did go down to Yalta just for.
That's where Regis lived. That's Regis' apartment.
Very Greek again.
So Yalta is a very cool place if you're sightseeing. I mean,
we have Lenin.
Sevastopol, I would say, is better because there's a lot of different historical sites, a lot of military stuff, a lot of just historical stuff. But Yalta is a kind of a resort place. So if you like to go on beaches, if you like boating and fishing and hiking, Yalta is kind of the place for you. It's very much that's what it's oriented towards. And Yalta, of course, is famous because, I can't remember if I put that picture up or not. I actually got a picture, and unfortunately, I don't think it's in this post, but I did get a picture of the monument at the old palace where the big three met, where Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin met.
Exactly.
They met. This is where they met at Yalta.
The fate of the post-war world was decided.
Yeah. So at 1944, after Crimea was liberated, they couldn't meet there until after Crimea was liberated. But after Crimea was liberated, they met there.
Oh, there's the big three.
I
took a photo.
I did post that picture. I could not remember if I did or not. So yeah, that's an actual monument by this old.
People have been sitting in Stalin's lap, or at least rubbing him there. It looks like.
Yes, I think that's kind of an obvious pose when people take photos by this, to sit in one of their laps, and you can tell that they're rubbed down a lot more. And this is just a mall in Yalta. It's a very 1990s style mall, but it's very cool.
Oh, my man,
some street art. I forget their names. The first two dogs in space, and of course Yuri Gagarin in space.
Well, Laika, Berka, and Strelka.
Yes.
Berka and Strelka survived.
Yes.
Laika didn't.
Yes, Laika's the first living creature to go into space. Unfortunately, did not survive. Yeah, it's Khrushchev's fault. But this is a funny building because instead of hammer and sickle, they have
is it mining?
Anchor,
no, marine.
Yes, an anchor and an axe. I'm actually not even sure what it's in reference to, but it's the seaside resort with a lot of trees. So maybe that was just kind of an interesting play on that. And we're still in Yalta. No, I'm wrong. This is Kerch. We're in Kerch now.
I didn't see like a title.
You know what? I missed that transition.
This
is Kerch. Yeah,
there's the title transition.
We are in Kerch. No, I missed it too. I
Kerch.
just forgot. Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, this is Kerch. Yeah, so this is cool. Kerch is a smaller town. It's a little over, I don't remember the exact population. It's a little over 100,000 people. This is the oldest church in Crimea.
Which is also small compared to most of the churches. Yeah, nice little.
The older you get, they tend to be on the smaller side too, like especially before 1000 AD. And this is the Obelisk of Glory, which is at the top of the mountain in Kerch. So there's a long staircase going up to it. In fact, I think I posted photos of the stairs too. If you keep scrolling, and that's also where the wreath laying happened.
Some young cadets or some formal gathering
yes,
of young girls
not
taking
sure what. Yes, so there's some young girls in there. I guess that guy was their instructor or something. That was a little group. I'm not sure what organization it was, but yeah.
Oh yeah, big staircase. He wasn't kidding.
Big staircase. You can see it's quite a.
That looks like a great leg workout.
Yeah,
yes,
that's leg day.
It is. It takes some huffing and puffing to get to the top, and this is another small, I can't unfortunately remember the name of it, but this is another small little Greek settlement that's very old Greek settlement that's located in Kerch. So that's a cool little place you can go to. And this is on Victory Day itself. This string of photos starting here is on Victory Day itself. You can see the flags.
Victory banner.
And this is a tribute specifically.
By the way,
go ahead.
This quilted quote that you see here that has these sort of ridges on them, that is what they call, the bad word for Russian is vatnik. That is what an actual vatnik was. This quilted top that the girl is wearing in the statue.
I don't know, and the guy too. Yeah, I don't know why they hate on it so much. It's a convenient garment.
I'm proud of that name. Yeah.
And of course, so it wasn't just the main obelisk where they started laying wreaths. Basically, all of the major monuments, even little monuments, got wreaths and flowers placed.
And a griffin.
A griffin. That griffin was in a picture I put farther up. But yes, that's the griffin. And then below that, you see this is the eternal flame for Kerch, and where they started the Victory Day ceremony. They started in the eternal flames at the bottom of the hill, behind Lenin.
Right, at the bottom of the staircase, right?
Yes, bottom of the staircase, behind the Lenin statue, and this is the eternal flame, gas-powered. And now this is a very famous quarry, which I unfortunately can't remember the name of, but this is the quarry that was located near Kerch, where... So basically the story with this, so Kerch was actually occupied twice. The Germans did an offensive and briefly took Kerch right at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa, but they were pushed out by a Soviet amphibious landing after 7 weeks. But during that 7 weeks, they, of course, killed as many people as they could.
Oh, Spanish Fabs is with us,
yes,
and
this is the name. Thank you. She remembered the name. Yes, the Jamushka Quarry. And so the second time when the Axis did successfully take all of Crimea, including Kerch, in 1942, because people knew how brutal they were the first time, somewhere about 15,000 people hid in this quarry. It was a mix of soldiers, partisans, and a lot of just civilian families went and hid there. And it was a 6-month siege. It was a 177-day siege to take this quarry. Yes, and there was no water, so they were literally basically using helmets or buckets to get condensation off the walls. There's that little water, because all of the water sources, because it's just a quarry, it's not a military base, so all of the water sources were outside the quarry. But it did take the Germans 6 months to take it, so that's part of the reason Kerch is a hero city, is because of the resistance there. It lasted longer than France and Belgium. It lasted longer than Poland. It lasted several times long. This one place lasted longer than most of Western Europe. So,
yeah.
That looks like a grand and very educational trip to me. And what I'd like to say after this, Odessa is coming home. I have no doubt of it because, you know, it's named after Odysseus, like that Greek heritage by Catherine the Great. I have no doubt in my mind. But yep, that was Ian's, what do we call these? Assignments. Yes.
Yes.
In Crimea.
Yes, and by the way, if you visit Crimea, Crimea is great to visit, but Ukrainians have officially declared that any trip to Crimea is illegal. So you are, even if they don't notice that you went there, if they don't see your vacation photos and add you on the kill list, you're not supposed to visit Ukraine after visiting Crimea. You are supposedly banned forever from Ukraine.
Black bad list.
Yes, you're on the naughty list. So it's the honor system. Even if the Ukrainian intelligence doesn't know you went to Crimea, you have to, Scouts honor.
Can you imagine, the Obama administration really thought that they could make Sevastopol NATO Navy base. Like that was what they really thought was going to be doable if they only overthrew, the Yanukovych government. They can just, move NATO right into Sevastopol. Like, how delusional are these people? But that was my thoughts. Like, just the idea that Russia would just allow that. Like,
ultimately,
thank God Russia didn't just allow that. What?
A bit of breaking news, because after all the harebrained schemes we can get into, that Europe has ideas of how to still win or just basically scavenge this war or scavenge it. I mean, Grant Sharps was at this Royal Navy meeting or summit or something, and he reiterated, of course you can hit Crimea, targets in Crimea, because we consider that Ukraine. He just did that today. I don't know. I think there's going to be a Zakharov answer to it, probably. There probably already is, but I haven't seen that. That's still their thinking, these people. Western Europeans.
And I do want to touch on that point, Billy Bob's point, because, that was a big takeaway for me. Because, there were several takeaways I had about Crimea. One, like Billy Bob said, it just seemed, after seeing it for myself, it seemed really ludicrous that Russia, Moscow, or Russians in Crimea itself were going to go along with a coup and just, be a NATO satellite. Especially because you go to Sevastopol and the rest of Crimea, but Sevastopol in particular, because that was the focal point of wars like the Crimean War. You had the Crimean War, you had World War II, and it just seemed, and not to mention the various wars with the Turks, it just seemed really ludicrous that anyone in the Obama administration or the Pentagon thought that was, maybe they were expecting Crimea to go back to the motherland after the coup. Maybe that was just an accepted loss. But if they were surprised by it, then I don't know what to say, because it looks pretty obvious, especially when you see the number, because there are numerous foreign cemeteries for the foreign soldiers who died there. You have a couple Italian cemeteries. There's a German cemetery. There's a British cemetery. It's just.
I watched on Victory Day, May 9th, I watched like a Victory Day procession from maybe 2010, 2012. And they had like a French brigade. They had a British brigade, an American brigade, all there in the Moscow procession. Just no longer. It's gone. There was a great article, by the way, Sonar 21, Larry Johnson, CIA guy, who said Russia remembers, the West forgets. And it goes into detail about how disgraceful this is.
A city like that with such history, with so much history, it's so ludicrous that the West says it's Russian colonialism to reclaim it, or, it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm sure when you're there, you feel just how Russian it is and how the weight of history.
So you're suggesting that Russia is not a colonial empire like the U.S.? That's preposterous, Leo. That's preposterous.
I'd say it's willful. It's not just, we forgot about it. It's willful forgetting, because, the problem, I think we have this self-inflicted ideological problem, and it started at the beginning. We wanted 2 victory days. We wanted May 9th, which I would call the real victory day. And then you have May 8th, because the time difference where we have victory in Europe Day that the West celebrates. And now there's just one. There used to be 2 distinct holidays. Now there's just one, because no one celebrates Victory in Europe Day on May 8th. There's no,
No.
I don't think a single NATO country did or said anything official on.
No, it's Europe Day now. That's what
Did they
call
change
Europe
it
Day.
Did they actually change the name?
It's the
Is that
it's Europe
official?
Day, and it has to do with the founding of the whatever preceded the European Council, and that's what they talk about, this new peaceful European system that we created, and it's completely forgotten. It's just like Lenin's birthday became Earth Day in the 1970s, deliberately, just to wipe the other out. You know?
The comparison I like to make about Victory Day is there's a story from the Bible with King Solomon, who had the reputation of being a very wise mediator, because God gave him wisdom. And there's that very famous story of the two women who come to King Solomon with the baby because one of the babies died. So both women are claiming the living baby is theirs. And Solomon says, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to compromise. I'm going to cut the baby in half, and you can both have a piece of the baby. And what happens? You know, the mother who was faking, who wasn't actually the mother, said, okay, that's fine. That's fine. I don't care. But the actual mother was very upset and just said, no, just let the other woman have the baby. I don't want to see him. And Solomon knew, of course, that was the real mother. I think I like to say that, I think that's a good analogy for Victory Day, because right at the beginning, it said, no, we want to split that holiday. We want to cut that holiday in half, May 8th, May 9th. And then the side that didn't actually care about the holiday to begin with stopped celebrating their half of it. Only May 9th is left.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy. I was thinking about, the chances that, Crimea would end up in the Western orbit was even more unlikely than Georgia ending up in the Western orbit. And it seems that, they can't even get Georgia. If they can't get Georgia, how less likely is it that they're going to ever get Crimea? But it is a good news that, Georgia is realizing that they don't want to become the next Ukraine. And,
well done.
It looks like there's a lot of effort to by the West to, end this law. And there's a lot of, influence and,
there's pressure from all the European Union, like foreign secretaries, foreign ministers, put pressure on them. The U.S. Senate, just like they did with the ICC, they said, if you do this, we'll probably sanction you. And they sent this guy, for European integration guy, and the prime minister, the guy who pushed for this, he just didn't meet him twice. He said, fuck off. This is basically, I'm paraphrasing, this is not Ukraine. And there are still all these Euromaidan type paid assholes with the masks, Euro flags, all in English, and they're smashing on the gates. Unfortunately, I don't have this footage, but it passed on the third reading, and now it's finalized into law. Apparently, I'm just going to say bitchvilly, because there's something in front of that, something bitchvilly. What I call the president of the country can still veto it, but it's such an overwhelming majority, I think 80 to 34, that they can override the veto. So well bloody done. I hope they stay the course.
Yeah, and then let me ask you about the billionaires. So there's one particular billionaire worth like a third of all of Georgia's GDP, and he seems to be allying himself with Russia, right?
Ivanishvili, I think, because he was basically who was before the chocolate King Poroshenko in Ukraine. He was the middle guy. He was like, I'm going to work with.
Yats was before.
Sorry, the last Democratic guy who was he had to go at Maidan because he wanted to work with Europe and he wanted to work with Russia as well. That's kind of him, but he made a fortune on the Russia connections. Now, I don't know how they count their fortune. Fortune is a third of the GDP. I know how they do it with Putin. As in all the state-owned stuff, they just count as private property. But that's every headline said this billionaire under the boot of this billionaire. Yeah, he's a wealthy guy. I know that much. But
I think it's BS. I mean, it's just like
smells
one person, no matter. I mean, it's like saying Bill Gates is a third of the U.S. GDP. You have to really. It's the biggest stretch in the history of stretches in a modern economy. Say one person owns a plurality.
Yeah, but that's what you do when you got the good righteous protesters. Then there's the big billionaire jackboot. That's how you project it. That's how you're supposed to.
I want to say, as far as who the billionaires are going to sign with, or how people. I mean, if you're making a buck for a Western NGO, and probably if you work for a Western NGO in Georgia, especially, you're probably getting paid more than you would get in the local economy if you're getting.
Oh yeah, you have to pay more. Yeah.
Yeah. So of course those people are personally affected by this. So I understand. Of course they're upset because that's.
And I revel
that
in
gravy
this.
train might go away. But the big thing is, as far as the country as a whole, as far as the economy as a whole, and I argue, particularly with people from the Garden of Europe, the European gardeners on the
Borel's garden, yes.
They say, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you know what? At the end of the day, you can look up Georgia's trade balances. So, of course, and I did about a year ago look up Georgia's trade balances. So, of course, China, I think, if I remember correctly, just in raw numbers, China is their top trade partner because, let's be honest, China is kind of everybody's top trade partner.
Most of the world, yes.
But their most important trade partner is Russia because, of course, all the energy comes from Russia, that Russian gas, even from what I'm told by people who lived in Georgia, even the stoves in the private houses are all gas. It's Russian gas. They're very dependent on it. And also not just giving Georgia, selling Georgia stuff, buying Georgian stuff. I mean, I don't know, what's Hungary like? Can you, Ben, could you go into a supermarket and buy, Georgian products? You see a lot of Georgian food products, wine products. What do you see? What does a supermarket look like for you? Do you notice it?
Very rare. Unfortunately, since 1989, our country was built to serve and sort of exchange with Germany. So most of the brands we see in the Lidl supermarkets, the Spar supermarkets, the brands from the German shit. But I have seen some Ukrainian salt. I think it might have been from the Soledar mine. So I've seen some of that. I don't remember. There are specialty stores like Gruzian cuisine where you can probably get those, but I don't see them on most of the shelves. So.
Yeah, I think it's probably true in just the Eurozone in general. They don't, because Georgia is not in the Eurozone, so why would they buy the crap? And
Hungarian guy also doesn't see them on the shelves. Sorry.
Yeah, but in Georgia, you see. I mean, not in Georgia. In Russia, you can see Georgian products everywhere. You can get, like my favorite Kasha brand is from Georgia. There's Georgian wines I like. So, I think just me living in Moscow, probably at least once a week, buy some Georgian product. And I think it's not a trade partner that Georgia could afford to cut off. So it's very vindictive, and the Europeans get so upset. They're like, well, why don't you, cut off your nose to spite your face because we want you to. And,
I haven't seen this product, but apparently we have some chocolate from the Chocolate King on Hungarian shelves as well.
So, yeah, I mean, we're just so happy that, the government of Georgia is deciding to look out for the interests of the Georgian people themselves. And I mean, that's all we really want. And it's very dismaying when these governments don't do that. Like, we're just in dismay. And like, we're upset that the civilians of these countries allow their governments to do policies that aren't in their interest. But
can I have some?
The foreign forces are trying to sway the populations. I mean, the massive protests, the Georgian right being utilized. I mean, they're trying really, really hard to
busing them in. It costs a fortune. That's what's giving me some schadenfreude that they paid. I think Nuland said we've already paid $5 billion into this country. This was before Maidan. Like, imagine the fortune this must have cost just to fall on your face by a Farrell. It's just, brilliant. Well done, Georgia. But that guy, Mr. Prime Minister, just please watch your back. Be safe.
Yeah. The West seems absolutely apoplectic at the thought of losing Georgia. And you can read that in all the headlines. They just seem beside themselves, trying to, keep Georgia in the Western orbit, but hopefully it doesn't happen. It looks very good so far. The law passed 3 different stages, and so that's great.
Also the opposition is appealing to, I think I read Britain, but multiple foreign governments to please help us overturn this law. I mean, that kind of that's why the law is passed. I mean, isn't that like a perfect example? Oh, well,
the USA and most of these, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think every major European country has a foreign agents bill. And the first major country to have a foreign agents bill at all was the USA.
US of A.
So it's very much do as I say, not as I do, because all of these countries crying about Georgia having this bill have the same almost word for word. And so funny how in all the news outlets they say, oh, well, this is right out of Russia's playbook. It's like,
I did some research on this.
oh, really? So it's not. Why is it Russia's playbook? Why isn't the USA's playbook? Does that talking point just not sound as good if you say it's out of America's playbook?
That's why. That's exactly why.
On a personal level, I've been taking Ian's statement. 1938, when the U.S. passed that law about foreign agents. So, and I've been heavily barraged with Twitter propaganda about Georgia, and I would answer it all with a cogent quote from a U.S. Department of Justice talking, which laid out the 1938 plan, and over again. So I finally got a comment back from X or whatever you want to call it, and they said we've found some what material, so not suggestive material, but some material on your site. Would you please re up your
Oh, you're talking about Twitter?
yeah, Twitter.
Yeah. Re-authenticate.
Re-authenticate.
We did it 4 times, and it just says.
It just yeah.
It says,
Oh,
congratulations, you're authenticated, and then it says
That I'm not.
there's a problem with.
There's a problem, so I basically been
They
thrown
did the
off.
exact same thing with Garland Nixon, by the way.
Oh yeah,
He was in this loop, and he just couldn't get it back.
yeah. So, but apparently, as I kept doing it, I would see that I was introducing these facts to a lower and lower number of people replying. First it was like hundreds of people, so it wasn't going to get read. But then after a while, it was like 4 people. Sometimes I was the first one to reply, so I could see that they were getting worn down by the fact that they're just basically dealing in falsehoods and lies. So
well, how do you get around your pretense that you support freedom of speech? You know, you make all the platforms privately owned, and then hey, when the private owners regulate the speech, it's not the government doing it. That's perfectly legit. So it's just it's a farce. It's a pretense that the West cares about freedom of speech. And I was thinking about just democracy in general, and how about the Democratic convention is probably going to be held online because they're just so afraid of the people that they supposedly represent. I mean,
imagine the protest they would be there.
Yeah.
So they're not going to subject themselves to the people. They're going to sit in their ivory towers and have a video conference for their convention. I'll bet. I know there's a lot of people eager to go to Chicago. Tony Montero and his group was going to go over there and raise some hell. So yeah, they don't want to subject themselves to that. So I expect they're going to end up doing it online, and they were very happy to do it online during COVID. And they're like, "Oh, this is great." No, but anyway, we're changing the subject a little bit. So I
before
apologize.
we change, because
yes,
I want to respond quickly to Ian, who said every major country has this fire law. I actually did some pre-research, and these are the countries that actually have them. The USA, as Carlos said, 1938. Russia, 2012. Hungary did one in 27, but it was revoked in 2020 under EU pressure. And now we have the Sovereignty Protection Bureau, which was passed last year. So we actually have one. Australia in 2018 in collaboration with the US Department of Justice. So that's kind of a selective one. Then there's the Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Republika Srpska, which is a non-declared one. They passed it in April, so not so long ago, 2024. Countries that tried to pass it but didn't. Number one is Canada, Canada, but I just like to. Anyway, 2021 proposed it against Russia, China, and Iran, but it's still not passed. The EU itself proposed one in 2023 over Qatargate, but it's apparently there was some pushback from the US and couldn't pass it. And now we have Georgia. So that is the complete list of existing and non-ratified FARA. There's not so many in the world, guys.
I would have thought there would be more. That's interesting. I'm glad
that's all I could find.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's really kind of sad when you think about it, that Daddy USA has the bill and then just kind of beats its little vessels. No, you can. I have this law. It doesn't mean you can. You know
Exactly.
It's which
Yeah.
is a completely sensible law. to have.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
It is. I mean, the USA doesn't want potentially hostile countries, influencing its media. It's just a completely sensible thing. If you don't lock down your own media, someone else will influence it. It's crazy to think that wouldn't happen.
And the U.S. was first, and they've had it for 84
Yes.
years.
Well, it's very much, I think dishonest people fear being done to them what they do to other people. So I think it's not a coincidence that it is a sensible bill, but it's not a coincidence that the USA was the first by long shots to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Ben, did you mention China? Does China have a law?
I didn't mention China because it doesn't have the equivalent of the FARA law, but I think the law there, maybe Leo would know some more, is so strict that you got no chance of, there's everything has a China variant with very strict laws.
But that's interesting because it suggests that, just because you don't have this particular law doesn't mean the West has free reign over your.
Oh, no, they're busting spy rings every other year. So obviously they have mechanisms, but I don't know what they are, Leo. Maybe.
And other countries might have mechanisms too, without this particular law. So, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely there was a censorship.
I know it's more difficult to get into the Communist Party of China, CCP, than it is to get into the Green Beret Special Forces in Britain. So I imagine there's huge checks. Just so you're not going to easily be a representative of the people while taking foreign money. You can see all the corruption cases, people getting detained or just killed. So yeah, it's risky business.
There's been some unrest in Hungary, right, Ben?
Yeah, they have this European injection guy, Mr. Magyar. I don't know what, but I don't anything that that has surfaced from him. It doesn't seem to be legally damning to the government, and it's all about let's raise a stink, and it's all very very Brussels smelling stuff. Big EU flags, big English signs saying "Help us, we want to free Hungary," and I don't think it has a lot of momentum, especially now that Xi Jinping's been here. By the way, everybody has heard about Putla in the Western press, but this guy, Jakub Janda, something, a Czech guy, is the first guy I saw Hitler from, as in Xi Jinping. Like, look at Orban talking to Hitler. That's the first time I'm seeing this one, but that's it. You can understand if the EU has like comprehensive FARA laws, it will be used against the Putinists and the Shiists, not against Brussels and the US. Definitely not.
Also, the new offensive actually has cracked CNN. I was so surprised that they broke away from the Trump trial. Is a trial with the porn star
Stormy Daniels.
Yeah,
Stormy trials and the hush money.
Right, in the hush money, and they actually mentioned the Kharkiv, the Russian invasion toward Kharkiv. So so anybody, what do you think that's all about? I know now Shoigu is finally going to have the retirement he requested 2 years ago, but
no, he's not.
He's
by
not.
The way. He's been promoted. All the Western headlines says he's fired or demoted. He's been promoted. He's the head of the National Security Council. He's actually going to be the big.
Right.
But yeah, okay. So I don't know. I'll just set it up quickly. This all began, I think, Friday night, because the first time I heard about it was Saturday, which means this is a 4-day. The West calls it an offensive, right? And what it did, Kharkov, there's talk about a Sumy one, which is also in the north, there was a 1,000-kilometer front line, which was being fought all over the place, like multiple, at least 100 times a day. And suddenly that got like 1.5, like extended by 500 kilometers. That's basically what happened, into a quiet area. And then the BBC interviewed these guys saying that the Russians just walked in. All the first line of defense, the minefields that were supposed to be there, there's not there. And Ukrainska Pravda, their Pravda in the Ukrainian language, not the English ones, saying, where the shit is that? We played millions of hryvnias to companies that don't exist, and they're just moving. I think there are 6 or 7 villages at this point encountering basically no resistance. There's mass evacuations. There's also mass surrenders that you can find on social media that people won't talk about. And now there's panic. They've sent Syrsky, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian forces, there into the Kharkov region. They sent Budanov. They're blaming each other pretty publicly on the internet. It's your fault. It's your fault. And suddenly just the level of the panic is they sent Mr. Blinken, the rat, to Kiev on another unannounced little visit, and the official line is to reassure them of the steadfast support that the US has, and there's also blame game that it's because of the late arrival of the Western aid and all that delay, and it's just wonderful to see. The second title I would have had for this is we're in the end game now, because now they're relocating people, from Chasov Yar, the last big 8-year fortified settlement they still have in Donbass, and they're sending them up to Kharkov to meet this, I think, a tiny kind of shaping buffer zone. But we have a military guy with us, and Ian might disagree on some points there. So very interested to hear what you think.
Well, so it's kind of interesting because it's new, but it's also a repeat of things we've seen already. It's interesting how these quote unquote Western intelligence agencies reporting through the media that, Russia is going to attack in the spring, Russia is going to attack in the summer, Russia is going to attack in the fall. And they did this every year for years until 2022, Russia actually did attack, and they basically just walked in. It seems like despite saying every day Russia is going to attack, they did not seem prepared for it at all. And there was, they tried to retroactively say, we knew Russia is going to attack. We had it all planned out. I was like, no, you didn't. It was very obvious. They just kind of walked in and had that northern and southern and eastern thrust, took Kherson, took all these different towns. It's totally unexpected. And that's kind of what happened again, because they've been talking about Kharkov for months. They've been saying, Russia might attack Kharkov. Russia might attack Kharkov. And they were saying this. I remember 2 or 3 months ago, I was seeing speculation in Western media about them attacking Kharkov. Then one day they actually did attack it, in that direction at least, and walked in again. So it's like,
240 square kilometers. I don't know what that is in Imperial, but that's what I read yesterday. That's just 3 days.
It's a lot more than Ukraine's entire 2023 offensive.
Way larger than that by now. Yeah.
Yes. So it's, I've said this before. I think it's this kind of broken clock syndrome. Western mouthpieces just say Russia's going to attack, whether or not, and they don't actually know anything. They just say it. So when it does actually happen, it's a complete surprise because they didn't actually know anything. And it's also kind of a reversal of what happened in fall of 2022. So in fall of 2022, Ukraine did have a very large numerical advantage. They still had large Soviet stockpiles. They were getting all of those former Warsaw Pact stockpiles and NATO stockpiles. They were flush with supplies and equipment and ammunition and manpower. And Russia was not, because they were refusing to bring in, the regular army, the conscripted forces, and were just using that small pool of volunteers they started with and hadn't done any kind of mobilization. So there was a very large just firepower and numerical advantage in Ukraine's favor and an extended front line. So what did Russia do? They did give up territory. They abandoned Kherson City. They left the Kharkov region completely. And, of course, that was just the greatest victory in human history.
The Kharkov offensive, they called it.
Yes. And it was just like, even at the time I said, guys, they didn't encircle any significant numbers of Russian forces. They didn't. They just and it wasn't even anything brilliant tactically about it. They just drove in and didn't really meet any resistance. So it wasn't a sign of Ukrainian armed forces being tactically brilliant either. They just walked into abandoned territory. So Russia was willing to give up territory to shorten the front lines so they could use the manpower they did have. And also, one thing that happens in military operations is something called mission creep. Mission creep is when you go into an operation, okay, here's the specific victory conditions I want. But what can happen is mission creep, where you get sucked into this trying to take more than what you had originally planned, trying to do more than you originally planned, and just drifting from what you had originally wanted. That's mission creeps. And so I'd say right from the beginning, Russia was good at avoiding mission creep, and they weren't getting sucked into trying to hold territory like Kherson, like, oh, we have Kherson, so we have to hold it forever, no matter how
No, they always give up land for an advantage.
Yes, so they traded space for time is what they did. But now it's reversed. Now it's in Kharkov region, and it's a reversal. Ukraine has a lot of disadvantages, and are they going to be willing to trade space for time? So far, they haven't. They've been fighting tooth and nail for every square inch of territory.
Gregor, that's still happening. They report like we've shot down a Russian helicopter, and 2 hours later they said, "Well, our helicopter went down. Here's the guys that actually died." They still do that like very, very strongly. But I think the verdict I'm getting from Ian, I hope I understand correctly, it's not a big air offensive. It never was, but it is stretching the manpower, the resources of Ukraine. Is that correct?
The other thing, well, yes, but I would say Russia is very good also about being tight-lipped. They're good at operational security. So
they didn't broadcast
They
this.
don't blab. They don't blab about their entire. They don't release theatrical trailers for upcoming offensives like it's the next Marvel movie. You know, this is. So even right now, after that Kharkov offensive has started, you know, their public statements, which are vague enough, they don't really tell you anything. So they want this 10-kilometer buffer zone, which they might be happy with. They might do more than that. And they're also vague about how many resources they've committed to the offensive and how much they still have that they haven't sent over the border.
I don't know the size of the new North group. I know it's been announced.
They have to. I mean, they did good publicity. They came up with I don't know if it's an old symbol or if they just made it up. There was that cool diamond-shaped. They're thinking ever since I think Z and V accidentally became viral.
It's called the Jungnir, which I think was also the spear of Odin for some reason. I actually looked up that symbol.
So they have that northern offensive, and it's still at this point fairly small, but you know, I'm seeing panic. There's a lot of panic.
Me too. Because this morning, 8 hours ago, I watched it this morning. The New York Times talked to Kirilo Budanov, the SB, not SBU, you know, the GUR, the military intelligence guy in Ukraine. And he said, there are no reserves. Everybody we have has been committed to this place or the other. That's almost verbatim. I actually can find it if you want. But that coming out, as well as, and I haven't heard from Leo for a while, and he's in Germany. There was this harebrained scheme that already got shot down like 2 days ago. Some German MPs, I don't know which one, said, we should institute this, I don't know how many kilometer no-fly zone over Western Ukraine from the soil of Poland and Romania. That would be great. That's great. And then Macron doesn't have to send troops. And apparently that's been shot down by the Chancellery and what's the Scholz's party? The Social Democrats?
Yeah.
SPD, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
Apparently that was shot down before it could even grow roots. What's your thoughts on that?
It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, even people in their own administrations are seeing the impossibility of any kind of significant anything that NATO can do. Really,
yes.
I mean that's realistic. It's. I mean, it's supremely comical, but of course also very scary, because of these harebrained. Because defeat is not possible for these people to accept. Their massive egos, just civilizational hubris,
and a career they've built in this system.
Or
yes.
personal level as well, of course. Yeah, it's maddening. It's maddening. If you look at logistics on every front, right? In terms of military, in terms of economics, in terms of diplomacy, in terms of even propaganda, even perception, even global perceptions. It's just insane. What ideas they will come up with? I shudder to think.
Yeah, that's the thing. A cornered animal can be very fucking dangerous, and especially the Brits. What the hell will they come up with next? Is what I'm thinking pretty much every morning. But yeah, they don't even have their own. Increasingly, they don't have their own societies on side. Wondering if you want to see a couple of clips of some lies repeated again and again. I'll just start with Mr. Rishi Bloody Sunak here, who said this again, and this I think. But the German Chancellor, Mr. Scholz, also said, which I found astonishing. Listen.
Putin cut off the gas supplies. It had a devastating impact on people's lives and threatened our energy security. And in this world of greater conflict and danger, 100 million people are now displaced globally.
Yes.
Putin cut off.
Yeah.
Putin cut off
when he destroyed the pipeline that he created and he controlled. That just cut Europe off of the gas supplies. And why would Putin do that?
Britain's even worse because someone already matched this with I think 2023. The Foreign Office declaration, embargo. We will no longer receive Russian oil, which means it's the British fucking government that did that. And here's Admiral Rob Bauer, the Dutch bastard.
For a long time, when
NATO.
it comes to politics, we thought if you have a mutual economic relationship between nations, we will never have war again. Well, that has been proven wrong, because we thought we had a contract with Gazprom. We thought we bought our oil and gas from a company, but that wasn't true. When Putin said to Gazprom, close the valve, they did it. It's not in that contract. So that is a serious thing we have to live with.
That's enough of this Dutch bastard. But yes, you see him? He told him. Putin told Gazprom to turn off the tap. I don't know how they can get away with this. I don't know how they can do this in public.
It's kind of like when Hitler and Stalin colluded to take over Western Europe. Remember? And that was going to happen until, of course, Hitler stabbed Stalin in the back. But no, they were together working to take over Western Europe. It's the rewriting of history. It's the self-serving, dishonest rewriting of history. But,
I wish I had that. I wish I had that. Apparently, it's been removed. That Karine Jean-Pierre that turned out to be a deep fake. That said 79 years ago, we, the West, we defeated Berlin. We defeated Stalin with the help of our Ukrainian allies. But now Berlin is on side, but the enemy in the East still exists. I mean, it's a deep fake, but that is where we're going. That's why I wanted to show it, because that is in many ways where we're going. One last thing. The Panic in Kiev produced something golden, which I love, and I hope you'll enjoy. It's not so long. Check this out. With the red alert, the Soviet march music, of course. Yes.
Is that Estonia?
Well, not so much, but yes, please.
Okay.
Oscar?
Это подарок Сталина полякам. Может, друзья ваши забыли?
Shitting on Schultz again.
Getting closer to Delaware.
And from here, it just, oh no. A loading issue. It goes to Paris, Madrid, Berlin, everything. London.
God.
Amazing, amazing piece of footage.
Границы России нигде не заканчиваются.
Beautiful.
Inshallah.
I was so entertained by that. I thought that was worth watching.
They
God
didn't
willing.
include New Jersey, you know. Good riddance, everybody would say.
We need an episode 2 of this.
Take
Yeah.
New Jersey, please.
Yeah.
God. Let me play
That kind of
devil's
confirms
advocate.
and corroborates the domino theory that the West is using to justify their.
Yeah, the little democratic, plucky Ukraine is holding back the big, devil, barbaric Mongolian empire that wants to gobble up Europe. That is the theme, and that's all they have now. It's amazing.
And it's self-identifying. You take Southeast Asia and the Vietnam War. Not only is Vietnam communist, but so is Laos, and Hun Sen is still in power in Cambodia. So basically, their predictions came true to a certain degree. You have 2 more communist countries, and I don't know what you would call Hun Sen in Cambodia. And
don't forget North Korea. It's part of the new axis of evil that they try to use, which is now Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. That seems to be the current level of expansion of the axis.
Yeah, another one.
But it turns out that it's no big deal. Like, who cares if it's a communist government in power? Like the West has done business with them, no problem. It's just that when the West tries to take their sovereignty, that's where the problem is. If the West would just let these countries be sovereign, there could be the liberal vision that they pretended to uphold and convinced Gorbachev that they had this liberal vision of peace through mutual prosperity, and but it was a lie.
I can add something to that because I watched Alexander McKay. I recommend the Marxist-Lenin Stalin Institute, something like this. He's part of the CPGBML London. He's a fantastically knowledgeable guy, and he said what Gorbachev did with the West was not a deal, and I think the Russians would echo it was an unconditional surrender. It was basically, there you go, whatever you want. And that's why Russians hate him. And that was a big setback for the communist movement too, because a lot of Russians perceive, I think, that the communists sold the country because they think he was an actual communist, where he was this sellout, West-loving jackass. And, after that, the drunken bastard who they put him to power, Yeltsin, that just doesn't matter. That was just continued looting. But yes, we need Alex on the show. And you're one of the strongest advocates of that. Welcome, Todd. We will talk to him one of these days. Yeah, I just wanted to add that bastard is not what I define as a communist, and I think most Russians don't either.
No, he was deceived. I don't think he was intentionally selling out. He was given a whole bunch of promises, and he believed them, and he thought, we're gonna have this liberal vision of a global trade, and we want to be part of this global trade, and we're going to be able to maintain our sovereignty. NATO is not going to move 1 inch to the east. But what a fucking idiot for believing that. So
I don't care what he believed. Functionally, he signed the surrender of the Soviet Union.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, the crux of the problem is that liberalism is just fraudulent from its core. I mean, liberal values, progressiveness, sure, we all like that. That's fine. Join the European family, sure. Georgians, why not? Europe was very cool for a long time, for 100 years. But it doesn't stop there. There's a domination. There's that comes with a package, right? And there cannot not be. There must be with liberal expansionism or like prosthetic conversionism, expansionism. Yeah, so we still come down to the central issue, which is that liberalism is a part of colonialism. It is a justification for
It's the most modern iteration. Yeah.
Capitalist imperialism. Yeah, there's no two ways about it.
I mean, the French colonies in Africa, some of them were democracies. Some of them were basically warlords ruled them. It doesn't matter to France as long as functionally they function as a colony. It doesn't really matter. It could be a caliphate. French don't care.
Yeah.
But as soon as they disobey, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was just speaking of Africa. I was just talking to a friend of mine. I mean, just very basic questions, right? That people don't seem to think about. You know, there's a heavy military presence from the U.S. in Africa, right? Then how did 5 million people in the Congo die from war between the warlords fighting for control of the mines, right? How did that happen with U.S. mighty military presence in Africa with state-of-the-art technology? Like, why didn't they go in? Like, you know, how was the Islamists able to take over Mali? And like,
those are the hush-hush ones. Yeah.
And like ban music all over Mali, this country with amazing music. How did that happen with a giant military base from the USA right there in the Sahel region? Like, these are just fundamental questions. Like, okay, you're under the liberal Western order that protects you, the protector of freedom, right? How did these things happen? 5 million people died from war, direct war deaths in the Congo. Like, how did that happen? You know, like, liberals have zero answer for that.
The Shah's Iran. I don't think I can use the word liberal, but it was an enlightened Western protectorate until the revolution. Now it's the big, backward, horrible Iran because they took control of their resources. Pretty much the same story, you know? British protectorate, by the way.
Yeah, and in the Sahel region, it's been pointed out by Traore and a number of other leaders in the region that before they had the protection of AFRICOM and
barely any terrorism. Yeah,
there were attacks by Islamists, but there were something like 38 deaths in a year. Yeah, I can't remember which country it was, but then when AFRICOM came in to protect them, that number went up exponentially.
Hundreds of percent, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Hundreds of percentage. How does that happen if you're the great protector? You know, exactly. Obviously, something Leo's pointing out here. Yes, dramatic.
Just very basic, very simple. You know, in terms of like, it's just very simple. People don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Niger, the simple explanation is, I think France has massive gold reserves without a single fucking gold mine, and Niger has 0 gold reserves and a lot of gold mines, and that's what explains the equation.
Mm-hmm.
I want to echo Leo's discussion about liberalism and the ideology. I think the best way to conceptualize liberalism is that it's the ideology of the ownership class, right? It's the ideology of the capitalist class, and it's great for them because they can manipulate these principles to further their own interests. So they can really uphold those principles when it benefits them, and they can be hypocritical and shit all over those principles when it benefits them. And they get to, you know, determine when and where they do that, because ultimately it's about power. It's about maintaining their own political power. So it's the class struggle where socialism is the ideology of the masses and liberalism is the ideology of the wealthy elites. And if they, as long as they proliferate liberalism, it maintains their own control over society. And, you know, socialism is the emancipating ideology of the working class masses. But I mean, that's the conceptual framework that makes the most sense to me. And I want everybody to adopt, because if everybody thought like me, this world would be perfect.
And it's dead.
What historian that said when he was asked, what's the difference between liberals and communists? He said, communists are the ones who really mean it.
Ooh, I don't know this quote, but
that's
feel
good.
I should.
Then, Stalin said, objectively speaking, liberalism is the
moderate wing of fascism.
Moderate wing of fascism. These are all true.
And
you
like
can see
Leo
it in
said,
today's world.
It wouldn't exist without imperialism. It couldn't
But
exist
it's also
without the luxury of imperialism.
yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
the
Absolutely,
thing is,
it's fraudulent because it's based on that. But I think it's important for us to also remember that the purported goals of liberalism, right, that they say that they are for,
Yeah.
right, the ostentatious public proclamations,
virtue signaling.
virtue signaling of this ideology, we are not against. We communists want to realize that we want equality, community, and justice.
Progressivism,
freedom. Yes, I mean
fraternity. Yeah,
I want to build communism. It's as simple as that. But
absolutely,
yes,
and we want individual freedom as well. We want individual freedom, but only as part of a collective. Under the only conditions under which real individuality is possible, real expression, individual expression, and freedom of self-determination. So yeah. Also important to point out that ideologically, they are opposed, but only in the sense that one is an authentic path towards those things, and one is absolutely a lie, a fraudulent pretense.
Yeah, by the way, a lot of Westerners who first went to the Soviet Union, including who sang Old Man River, Paul Robeson said that's the place he felt the freest to be himself. He didn't face racism, he didn't face discrimination and all that. Somebody has some points on this, because I wanted to draw this to not like a conclusion that I think Putin said that the vampire's ball is over. They filled their guts with human flesh, and he was talking about the colonial system. And just to get a sense of how over it is, I have a short clip, we'll get back to the conversation, from Mr. Yuval Harari, the second in command of Klaus Schwab. You will eat the bugs, the most liberal WEF bastard. And this was his diagnosis of the current situation.
Basically, if Russia is allowed to win, that's the end of the global order as we have known it for decades. The most fundamental rule was that you cannot just invade and conquer and annex another country, neighboring country, just because you're stronger. This was for centuries, for thousands of years. It was not the case. If we talked earlier about state budgets, the reason the average expenditure on the military went down from 50% to 7% and released all these resources to healthcare, education, and so forth is because most people, most countries felt that they're safe. That even if they have a strong neighbor, it's just not done anymore. Maybe there'll be some kind of border clash or whatever, but the idea that the neighbors will just invade us, conquer us, and annex our country, it's just not done. And this is exactly what Putin is trying to do in Ukraine. It's completely different from, say, the American invasion of Iraq or Afghanistan.
Okay. I'll pause it there, but he goes into that was totally different. All of that was totally different.
I mean, it's true, it is different.
Yeah.
But not in the way that he means.
Fair point, Leo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is different.
I don't want to be racist or discriminatory or whatever the correct word is, but to me it's very funny to see a guy with a guy with a thick German accent saying, if Russians win, if Steiner does not attack and Russia wins, this is end of world order. It's just,
yes.
I can just imagine that conversation in Hitler's bunker.
Only the worst accent I know is Ursula. That's it always reminds me of the Dark Times.
Our neighbors, stealing our laundry. Oh,
I don't think you can be racist against Germans. I don't think that's possible.
Oh, okay. Well, if they weren't so terrible, no, just kidding. But yeah.
The thing is, they have the alarm bells ringing, the red flags going up, and it gives me so much joy. This is the guy who talked about the useless eater, class of people, and we should shrink the population. That's this guy.
So here's a question: 5 years
Israeli,
from now,
unrelated. It's 5 years from now.
What are we gonna? How is reality gonna be, and how are we gonna be surprised? Like in 5 years, and we're gonna think we didn't see this coming 5 years ago. to me, I'm thinking it's quite likely that there's going to be a real, hot war where, we're going to be, talking about, the United States destroying and interdicting the trade lanes around the world, and that we need to do that, and they're justifying this, and just a real ramping up of economic war and hot war. And this is all part of a plan. It's a part of a plan that's established, Western strategy that they're going to be rolling out and implementing over the next 5 years. Is that possible? Or can we say that they don't really know what they're doing and they're just playing it by ear and they're going to see what happens? Like, is there a 5-year plan that the Western imperialists have? Or
I'm with B, and I can sort of prove that point. But anybody else want to go first? Because I have a particular aspect of this.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's you all know Mr. Nikolai Patrushev, who was the intelligence guy in Russia. He is now the aide of President Putin, and he's in charge of the shipbuilding industry, meaning they're the ones who are going to build fleets like the Soviets did. Civilian and military are kind of merged in Russia. And the fucking US, you can check this at, Defense One, Defense Post, these kinds of military defense magazines said, holy shit, they're talking about China. Their capacity for building ships dwarfs everything we have in Europe and around the world. They can build hundreds of ships while we can maybe do 2 in 2 years and something like that. That, I mean, controlling the sea lanes is what you mentioned, the energy, the trade, that they can already not do. I mean, that is sailed. And now they're in this economic war where I think Yellen said they're going to put 100% tariff on every Chinese EV because they know they're behind. They know that all that time they spent was in vain. And there was this amazing article. I'm going to paraphrase it. I think it was Business Insider that China, this is the danger of a Chinese EV because they released it. I think it was the BYD, a small one. I can't recall the name. It's about $10,000 in China, meaning. And it went down to say it's got the same quality. It drives as well as an American car, but American EV costs 3 times as much. So if you put 100% tariff on that, it's still 2/3 of the price. It's still cheaper. There's no stopping this. So I think a lot of this that we see in Ukraine and now in Israel, Gaza, and the Pacific, it's just we don't know. We don't have a plan B, plan C. It's just why didn't plan A work? And I don't see them having planning capabilities. Let's put it that way. It's my take.
So as far as
it's just a gamble. I mean, it's a little bit of a gamble on whether the West are going to wake up and actually become realistic. I mean, a lot of people have criticized Putin for being too naive and thinking that the West will come to their senses. For all of these years, trying to
well-deserved criticism. Yes.
Yeah. For being too naive and too trusting and too friendly and too when the other side has proven, when the West has proven to be completely insincere, incapable of sincerity. But what other option is there? We have to bet on people coming to their senses because there is no other, there's no other thing to do. I've a reverse of my previous Trotsky all-out smash the imperialists sentiment, which I said in semi-joking fashion last time I was with you guys. But yeah, I mean, one has to think that with the just reality hitting you in the face. I mean, people must come to their senses at some point. And
wondering what that sobering moment is, because they don't seem to be snapping out of it yet in Western Europe or in the US.
I think they're still embracing these.
I think the most important thing to assess the risk versus probabilities or whatever is still to understand the international bourgeoisie, the Western bourgeoisie, right? In the international monopolistic system called imperialism, like where are their allegiances? It's not with the nation states, right? Your European bourgeoisie are not really, they don't give a fuck about Europe. because they're getting rich themselves, and the ones in the U.S., fundamentally their interests, are not served by nuclear war. So it's just a matter of how they can maintain their exorbitant power and wealth.
Can they at this point? That's the question.
And I mean, she is just, he's straightforward. It's conflict or cooperation, and the choice is yours. So, they're going to have to do their calculations and come to a decision. They're running out of time, the West is. And so I don't know, I think things could improve from here. Alternatively, the West could choose to double down on chaos and conflict and think that their interests are going to be better served by doing that. So, Xi and Putin, they're going to try and persuade the West that that's not necessary, that we don't need to go down that road.
By the way, the next time we speak, Putin will already be in Beijing at the invitation of Xi. He'll be there Thursday to Friday, pretty much matching up what the silly Europeans told, the silly Macron and Ursula told Xi Jinping, and then the Hungarians and the Serbs. So yeah,
I imagine the intelligence services of Russia and China are going to be the first to know when there's a definitive answer to that question about what the West is going to double down on. And again, we might be naive. Like, looking back in 5 years, we might think that we were naive sitting here thinking that cooperation was an option ever. And that's the thing. Like,
you're right.
Like, how naive are we to sit here assuming that the West is able to cooperate? Because I'm not sure. That's kind of what I imagine in 5 years we'll be looking back and like, what the hell were we thinking?
You're right. You're right, Balazs. But I mean, look at Europe. Our prime minister, by the force of the surroundings, was saying, okay, we have to open to the West, otherwise we're fucked. And other than that, it's Fico. All the rest still think they're the prancing pony of the world. They're in a deep, deep hole, and they keep digging. And the thing is, the damage would be less if they stop digging, saying, okay, we want to deal with China, we want to deal with Russia, we want to have civil relations, we'll just be a normal country in the case of the US. We're not going to dominate the waterways. It would be better for the people in the US. And they won't do it. Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true, Retro. And that's their answer. That's always the answer of capitalism to an economic crisis is war. So, it's hard to imagine, what that looks like right now. But again, if we check back in 5 years, I think we might see it play out. And just like the run up into World War II, we might be in that same exact kind of situation.
Speaking of nukes, just a short bit. He's not a representative sample, I think, of the leadership of the US or even the capitalist forces. This is an extremely not gay senator from, what is it, North Carolina? This is him.
So, can I say this? Why is
Sorry?
it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
There are people like that.
Yeah. He's his position, his election is secure. I mean, he's going to remain a senator till he wants to leave. He knows his constituency and he's playing to it. But the Gaza situation, I think, will be seminal in shaping the world in the next 5 years. And I can't predict how, really, but it's so horrendous. It's so gut wrenching, and we hardly discuss it on this show because it's so simple to see what's actually going on. That there is a true attempt.
Everybody knows.
Cleanse the whole region of Arabs, of anybody else, and Christians too. Anybody else but Jews, anybody else but Zionists, really, when you come down to it. So
I'm convinced that Anthony Blinken knows this. Miller knows this. They have to know this. They have to see.
So there's a recent new PR offensive trying to pretend that the U.S. is opposing what Israel is doing and trying to pretend that, hey, we're doing everything in our power to stop this this escalation into Rafah. And so I guess there was like one shipment of munitions that's temporarily being held up as the virtue signal, showing that the Biden the genocide Biden is not on board. But it's all PR. And ultimately, the U.S., if they wanted to, could have stopped it today. They could have stopped it 2 weeks ago, 7 months ago. And the fact that they don't really tells us everything we need to know. But yeah, I mean, we're complicit in this genocide and this ethnic cleansing. And hopefully that changes. Hopefully there's enough pressure on the administration to do something else. But, they've got a lot of power, and the people, the disenfranchised masses, really don't have much influence to exert.
Yeah, but pressure, even if it's I completely agree, it's just a PR offensive. At least it shows there was pressure. Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, domestically, Biden is only doing this to establish his re-election potential, because it's on the wane. It's definitely on the wane. And I keep remembering what Regis said about his three sons. Regis Tremblay said, and I'm hearing this echoed throughout the internet. That is, if Trump wins, everything is fine. If Trump loses, they're not going to believe it was fair. So it's a fait accompli.
That's a possibility.
It's all down to Trump. And I will predict this. I think if Trump loses, there are enough people out there that are crazed that they're going to make Timothy McVeigh, Ruby Ridge, and Waco look like a waltz in the park, and that will force the deep state to come down on them, and that not just 50 or 100 or 200 of those militia suckers will be killed. I think maybe hundreds, if not thousands, would be wiped out or arrested. And I think unless my notion of the fact that most of them are made up of cowards with a lot of guns pans out, that's a possibility. But even if they're cowards, that won't stop the powers that be from wiping them out, and that might churn things a little bit when a lot of Americans are killed.
It's a possibility. I grant you that.
I think Trump's fealty to Israel and Trump's attack on Biden of not being loyal enough to Israel is detrimental to his base. I think a lot of his base is not happy with Trump's position and his. Of course, Trump is really stupid, and he counts on his base being really stupid. And he says it like this. He's like, shame on Biden for not being loyal to Israel and to the Palestinians too. He wants both sides of it in the same sentence, and he'll think that people are going to believe him. I mean, but there are a bunch of people that are just, Trump could shoot somebody in the head and they would still love him. And there are those people, and that's who he's pandering to with this nonsense.
But
I think as far as Trump,
they've taken head counts.
Sorry, I have to go.
You have to go.
Leo, thank you. Sorry we didn't give you more time. We'll see you.
Great talking to you guys. Until next time.
Bye.
Thanks, Leo.
Bye.
I think as far as the 5-year prediction is, I mean, it's very tough to predict because we don't even know. I mean, really, who is even going to be president of the United States in 5 years? Because it's not going to be Biden. It's not going to be Trump because it's 5 years, not 4 years. I mean, it's just, it could be anybody. We don't even have a clear picture of that because there's just nobody really. I mean, DeSantis apparently wants to be president, but he's apparently the voter.
How much does that matter, though? To me, that doesn't even matter who the figure
Well,
is.
I mean, I think it shows just how difficult it is to make even simple predictions. We don't even know who. We don't even have an idea of the candidates for presidency.
Oh, you might have
in
3 or
5
4
years.
presidents, if you trust that Civil War movie. That
Right.
Well, we know the policy isn't going to change. We know that there's policies put in place.
I think as far as Trump goes, I think he cut a deal because a lot of his criminal investigations were just postponed indefinitely. And he did a complete flip-flop. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that's a coincidence that he did a complete flip-flop on Ukraine. He went from saying I could resolve it in 24 hours.
This is the leaked plan, right? Which is completely unacceptable every step of the way to Russia, by the way. Go ahead. Yeah,
so he went from saying, and I think he was correct when he said he could resolve it in 24 hours, because when one side of a conflict is 100% dependent on you, you can end it in 24 hours by just forcing them to the negotiating table. And so he's correct when he said, but he did a complete flip-flop saying that he supports, Ukraine returning to their 1991 borders and all that. So I think and he apparently was rewarded by most, at the exception of Stormy Daniels and maybe one other probe on him. It seems like they rewarded him by postponing most of the criminal investigations they're threatening him with. I think it's likely that they're making some backroom deals with him. And Trump, and I've been saying this, he doesn't really have any principles. He just does what he thinks it works best for him. And right now, apparently, because Biden's falling apart, I think the powers that be are prepared for a Trump presidency. I don't necessarily see it as an issue. I mean, they'll generate hysteria about it, but they don't necessarily see it as an issue. They're just like, well, if Trump,
I remember that movie.
He'll just... we'll have Trump. He'll keep because he was already sold on Israel. There wasn't any doubt that Trump was ever not sold on Israel. We just needed to sell him on Ukraine, which apparently they succeeded in doing.
Wait, have you heard the latest on that? I know we're over time, but I'll do it quick. It was the Foreign Secretary of Britain, right? That guy, David Cameron. Apparently, this came out in the Times magazine, now picked up by Reuters. He convinced Trump that the best way to go is to get to a stalemate by the end of 24, where he can rush in. And he can say, okay, I'm going to make peace, but basically support both sides until then, which is now he's in trouble back in the UK. And Rishi Sunak said, no, I disavow this. But apparently that's why this whole stupid leaked plan of his came out in the Washington Post, I think.
Well, do you remember when we had a talk about the $60 billion and how Trump backed it? And I suggested that this might be because Trump doesn't want to be the bad guy in this situation, because if that bill just got stuck in hell, and then it would be Trump's fault, and every newspaper would say that in the world would say that it's Trump's fault that Ukraine fell. But Trump giving his blessing, so Johnson didn't get impeached and removed from office.
They stopped Moscow Marjorie.
Right, and she just got shut down. She was pissed
by Democrats. Which I think is new. Yeah.
Well, there was one Democrat I saw on CNN. I don't remember which Democrat it was, but he basically says Republican majority is doing the same thing as and he was quite proud of it. It's just like, it's like having a Democrat majority. There's no difference in the policies that a Republican majority in the House is doing. And so I think that's absolutely correct. Trump gave his blessing to that bill. And now he's not the bad guy that screwed over Ukraine. That after the election, he can be the guy who solves the situation, probably in the summer of 2025, like I was predicting.
Yeah, I think apparently the British Foreign Secretary and the Polish President Duda both worked on him with these little conversations to bring him to this point of view. I'm going to say I don't know who's next, and especially 2 years from now, maybe it's 5 years from now, maybe it's Macho Camacho from Idiocracy, but I do know. Give me a couple of presidents who are remembered by their three initials. It was LBJ, right? RFK, and this one is going to be FJB. That's for sure. Everybody's going to remember FJB. Sorry,
FJB.
F Joe Biden.
Fuck Joe Biden.
Everybody knows that name.
Oh, fuck Joe Biden. Yeah.
That's how they greet him anywhere he goes.
I like the idea that there's a backroom deals, and that the ruling class establishment is recognizing that Trump might be the best option, and they can blame Trump for anything that goes bad, and they can also leverage him and influence him and force him into positions by just how they're good at through their narratives and through the media. So I think they can definitely Trump is way more compatible with their interests than maybe he was 4 years ago. That's maybe what I mean. So alternatively, we don't even know if they're going to run Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate. There could be some kind of a surprise where health issues keep him off the ballot. And John Stepling, of course, pretty sure that it's going to be Michelle Obama. It could be. Other people could just pop up as names. Probably not Kamala. I hope maybe
No, come
Hillary.
on,
Hillary will
no.
make a comeback.
Oh,
The biggest political comeback.
Please no.
But it's going to be interesting. Domestic politics are going to be very interesting, with the Democratic convention, and then just to see who's on the ballot. And who could, if it's just Biden and Trump. I mean, Trump has a very good chance, and I think the establishment is going to be okay with that. They'll be able to manage that situation.
Here's a wrinkle.
Yeah,
Carlo, maybe you wanted to say something.
No, I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were starting something. A wrinkle is that he's kind of in the position of Bibi Netanyahu, that if he's out of power and, the Ukraine project falls apart, he could be in deep trouble, especially if the Russians take over the place and say, oh, look at all these documents we have with Burisma Holdings, with the Bidens. Oh, look at all this. It's something to consider that he personally could be in some legal trouble.
Who's he? Sorry. Who is he?
FJB.
Oh, okay. I mean, for sure.
Well, Ukraine was always his personal laundry machine,
Yes, no, exactly.
We have to wonder what the Ukrainians themselves, what dirt the Ukrainians themselves have.
Yeah, and usually the people, the ex-presidents are untouchable, but there's enough wind against him. He's the most unpopular president, like 60, 70 years, I think I read. There's enough wind.
And there's a precedent now of going after.
True, that's the other point.
But he's too old. They'll protect him.
It's elder
Pepe Escobar calls him the carcass in the White House. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. My bladder's full, but do we have any other closing thoughts?
No news items from me.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even touch on 80% of our topics, but we're already hour and a half in. We will reconvene on Friday. I think John Stepling has tentatively agreed to join us, so that's at least one guest. There was actually, I've been emailing with a representative of Naturi Karta. I'm probably saying that wrong. They're called, or is it Orthodox Jews? Naturi Karta. They're definitely anti-Zionist Jews, and I'm hoping that he's going to join us one of these episodes soon, hopefully. So anyway, that to look forward to. But I appreciate all the viewers. We've had a large live audience. Thank you for that.
Thank you for all the comments.
I just want to say, in Idiocracy, the lawyer, I like money. I like sex. That was that was my takeaway from that movie.
I remember that
movie.
I remember that it's electrolytes. The plants love them. That's what I remember from that movie.
The plants love electrolytes. Right. What's an electrolyte? Nobody knows.
All right.
I do want to say one thing that's on the downside, and it has to do with Jimmy Dore. Okay. Look, I know, but look, he said on his show, and he's right about this, that
that's rare.
Protesters were brutally treated on campus recently by the police. And if you want to hear somebody that's down on the police, listen to Jimmy Dore's rant against the police 3 years ago. I think it's a union representative of the New York police. He goes after that guy viciously. But he did say something that was grotesquely false against the Black Lives Matter movement. He said that contrary to what happened on the campuses recently, there were no arrests in the Black Lives movement. Now, that's absurd on the face of it. All Rosalie and I did was look it up, and the most established figure we saw there were 14,000 arrests around the Black
in
Lives.
the early days, there were many
And there were 300, and then there were 300 indictments brought by the Department of Justice alone. So that's the federal level. And then you have the state and the local level. You can imagine how many indictments were brought down. And to mention, we saw figures between 24 and 26 of the higher level Black Lives Movement organizers. A number of them were found murdered, and a number of those 24, 26 died under suspicious circumstances. So you got to take everybody with a grain of salt. And I just wanted to point that out. That's been nagging at me all week. And
So I'm
Anyway.
sorry you waited until the end of our program to open that can of worms, but you will get the last word on that. So,
I mean,
All
I
right,
don't
everybody.
know what's debatable about it. So.
Take care. Catch you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.
okay. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.